Daniel Ricciardo just dropped a bombshell on Mercedes F1. So we're going to be going through that in today's video, but before we get into it, make sure you like this video, and don't forget, if you want more Mercedes F1 content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that red button down below. But let's get straight into today's story. So Daniel Ricciardo responds to Mercedes rumor. As you all know, Daniel Ricciardo remains without a drive for 2023 following his McLaren departure. Daniel Ricciardo's days in Formula 1 appear to be numbered, with the outgoing McLaren driver still searching for a 2023 seat. His options are thinning by the second, with Nick de Vries' impressive debut at the Italian Grand Prix having put the Dutchman on Alpine's, AlphaTauri's and Williams' radars. It's being increasingly reported that should Pierre Gasly leave AlphaTauri for Alpine, then de Vries will move into Red Bull's sister team to partner with Yuki Tsunoda. So I think that will honestly be huge. This would see the Mercedes reserve driver leave his role at the Silver Arrows, something which the 33-year-old has been linked to. Williams appeared to be waiting for Alpine to make their decision, with the British team also having Williams Academy driver Logan Sargent on their list of potential Nicholas Latifi replacements. Haas appears to be Ricciardo's best chance to remain in the sport should the American team decide not to retain Mick Schumacher. Ricciardo has held conversations with Gunther Steiner, however, so have Nico Hülkenberg and Antonio Giovinazzi. The Honey Badger is prepared for a year out of the sport if that's what is to come, with the Aussie having certainly accepted that he could be forced into a one-year hiatus. I've certainly accepted I'm not going to be on the grid next year. I'm okay with that, Ricciardo said to Fox Sports. I've accepted I'm not going to do everything, or my management team's not going to do everything, just to put me on the grid, if it's not right or if it doesn't make sense. Obviously, this year's been challenging, and if I am on the grid, I want to know it's a place I can enjoy and I feel like I can thrive, an environment I feel I can thrive in. I don't want to just jump into a car for the sake of it. Now, I absolutely love what Ricciardo has to say about this. I think him taking a year off may actually be more beneficial. We've seen this times, a perfect example, I know it's a different sport, but Michael Jordan, when he actually left the sport of basketball for a little bit in order to regain, everything and his love for the sport. Maybe that's what Ricciardo's going through right now. He wants to be in the best position possible, and if he needs to take a year off, I think that is fine with that. Ricciardo may still be in the paddock next season, even if it's not as a first team driver, with Mercedes supposedly interested in making the McLaren driver their reserve next season. This would most likely mean Ricciardo would be in the German team's garage on a Grand Prix basis, something de Vries currently does himself. Ricciardo was asked whether the rumors were true with the Italian Grand Prix retiree, admitting he is keeping every option open. No comment, just kidding, joke Ricciardo. The truth is, I'm keeping every option open as far as not only next year, but for the future. I still don't know what next year looks like. So I think this is really interesting to see, because Ricciardo definitely wants to drive. Being in this sport for so long, he definitely wants to keep at it. However, it is hard because you don't want to make a wrong decision and force yourself into a position that is probably not beneficial for you and the team around you. Now, Ricciardo would spend a lot of time with Sir Lewis Hamilton and George Russell should he accept the reserve role. However, Hamilton thinks the Australian driver is actually far too talented to occupy that role. The 7-time world champion believes Ricciardo has earned the right to be on the grid, with the Brit certain the Aussie would be on the grid if I was managing him. And I completely agree with this. Ricciardo still definitely, as he is getting a little bit older, I still think he has a lot of talent to give to any of these great teams. Whether it's Mercedes, whether it's Haas, just as an F1 fan, I think I would love to see him still stay on the grid. I think he should be racing personally, said the 37-year-old. I think he's far too talented not to, and he's earned the right to be amongst us all, racing. But of course, if he's part of our team, that would be great. But I mean, the third role is not really, I think, what's best for him. I was managing him, he would be racing. And I think that is completely true. I love to hear that from Lewis Hamilton, because, he's willing to do whatever it takes to see the best out of the racers around him, or the drivers around him, and I think that's fantastic. I think the love for Ricciardo has really come a long way with Lewis Hamilton. However, I think he definitely sees him being more than just a reserve driver. Now, me as a Mercedes F1 fan, I would love to still see him a part of actually the team. I think it would be great to have him as a reserve driver. He also doesn't really get all the pressure that he needs right now, and he can look to get back into it if that time actually comes. So I think that will be honestly very interesting to see. Now, there was actually a little bit of a rumor that has been going around that George Russell is becoming the new Daniel Ricciardo, and there's a lot to it when it comes to that. And I thought I'd talk about this because I think it's just, very coincidental that Daniel Ricciardo may be looking to come over to Mercedes F1, and now Toto Wolff is interested in him, and they just recently signed George Russell as well. So Daniel Ricciardo at this current moment has no guaranteed seat in Formula 1 for the 2023 season, despite the unfortunate turn. Ricciardo was once the hottest property in Formula 1, the Aussie was once an incredible promising and made a great impression at Red Bull. He's now searching for a seat and even considering a year out. But why is George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo so similar? George Russell spent 3 years at Williams before getting the promotion to Mercedes this season. Mercedes, being the reigning Constructors' Champion when Russell joined, is a fact you should remember. This is because when Ricciardo was promoted to Red Bull in 2014, Red Bull was the reigning Constructors' Championship as well. Ricciardo has also started his career 3 years earlier with HRT. With Russell joined Mercedes when he was teaming up with Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton is highly regarded and many believed Russell would not compare to his 7-time World Championship teammate. They were highly mistaken. This rings a bell as well as those years ago. Ricciardo was teaming up with 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. Again, many thought Ricciardo would not match up to the dominant force that was Vettel during the early 2010s. So both drivers made a similar impact on the world championship teammates and thrived at their reigning world championship teams. This sounds about right, but let's look at the statistics. Statistically, Russell and Ricciardo in their debut year with their team are quite similar in aspects. When it comes to qualifying and average starting position, Ricciardo's average grid position was 6.26. George Russell so far this season is 6.19. This is spookingly similar, but when compared to their respective teammates, it's also more spooky. Vettel's average starting position in 2014 was 7.79, whereas Hamilton is currently 7.56. So it really does get even more crazy when you look at the stats. In qualifying head-to-heads, Ricciardo outperformed Vettel 12-7. However, in Mercedes head-to-head for 2022, Hamilton beats Russell 9-7. So the two aren't that similar when it comes to qualifying. However, Russell has achieved a pole position this season, so clearly has a potential for out-qualifying Hamilton before this season ends. In Ricciardo's debut Red Bull season, he made Q3. Similarly, Russell has made Q3 14 times out of 16. Away from qualifying, the pair have performed similarly in terms of race results. Ricciardo and Russell's race results. In terms of race results, both Ricciardo and Russell outperformed Vettel and Hamilton. As well, in the race result head-to-head, Russell has outperformed Hamilton 9-5 so far. Ricciardo outperformed Vettel 13-6 in 2014. Although neither Russell nor Hamilton has had a victory this season, they have both finished second. Hamilton has finished second twice, while Russell has only finished second once in 2022. Ricciardo finished in the podium 8 times in 2014, and Vettel finished on the podium 4 times. Ricciardo also had 3 victories in 2014, whilst Vettel didn't have one. So when it comes to all this, when it comes to the finishing points, both Ricciardo and Russell did well in the 2014 season. Ricciardo has only 3 pointless finishes. He had 2 DNFs and 1 second place stripped and subsequent disqualified. George Russell this season has got the reputation of being Mr. Consistency. Russell has only had 1 DNF so far this season, whereas all other finishes have been in the points. So both of them have had all the points at finishes except for instances to do with the car rather than in their driving. So I think it's honestly hilarious to also see this similarity between the two. I think George Russell and Daniel Ricciardo, I'm a big fan of Daniel Ricciardo due to the fact that, he is an Aussie. But when it comes to all of that as well, George Russell is definitely up there as one of my faves right now when it comes to the racing scene, and I may be seeing why that's the case. So I definitely do see a lot of similarities, especially in the stats. When it comes to their driving style, I definitely see George Russell really being a very mature driver compared to Daniel Ricciardo. I think Ricciardo really liked to have fun with it. He liked the flair, he liked the style, and I think that's what made him such a special driver. George Russell, on the other hand, he's not here about flash. He's not here to do anything crazy. He's here to drive at a very consistent level and drive very professionally. I think that's what he does differently to Daniel Ricciardo. So they both attack the sport of F1 very differently, but as you guys can see, it doesn't matter the way you attack it. If you get the same result, you get the same result, and that's definitely what you can see from both of them. Now, on top of all this, Wolff also aims for a win in Singapore and has to be suitable, he says. So Mercedes are still hoping to pick up a Grand Prix victory this season, but time is running out for that. With 6 race weekends to go, the German racing team are increasingly focusing on 2023. Toto Wolff, however, sees opportunities in Singapore. The Formula 1 season will continue with a race in Southeast Asia in early October. It is a moment moment for Mercedes where it can take full advantage of the car's strength, as the drivers will be driving with maximum downforce in Singapore, among other things. On the other hand, with the Marina Bay Street Circuit, as the track is called, Mercedes will face a street circuit earlier in the season. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell still struggled on such a track, so Wolff does not dare hope too much yet. The layout of the circuit has to be suitable for our car, Mercedes team boss said. We still believe that Singapore will be one of our better circuits, but at the same time we want to be careful for predictions. Mercedes may still hold out hope for second place in the Constructors' Championship. The difference with Ferrari is 35 points, giving the formation still something to fight for. Red Bull Racing will almost certainly grab first place, which is the first time since 2013, so I honestly think that is absolutely huge. So when it comes to what they have achieved, I think it's honestly great so far. I think Mercedes can really win at the Singapore Grand Prix. It is more twists and turns and less straights, and I think that could play a huge advantage to them, especially due to the fact that with everything that is going on, they could really go from there. Now, I did want to also mention that Toto Wolff, speaking on him, he actually talked a lot about Porsche joining F1, and he also said it would be a great thing for F1 if Porsche would join as well. They just need to figure out if there's another interesting project, whether you can buy a team. Maybe that's not 26, maybe that's not 27 or 28, and maybe that would be a great addition to the grid in F1. Every large corporation, especially auto companies, not only auto companies because Red Bull is pretty good at that, not only buys a racing team and invests large amounts of money into running it, but invests even more into activation is beneficial to F1. If a brand like Porsche is known all over the world who puts their marketing dollars to activate F1, we will all be benefiting, and I think that's the most important part. Not just having a team and running it, but in all the markets we race. Big advertising, big campaigns, putting the brand out there, that's what these big brands in F1 is important. So I think it's honestly great to hear what he had to say about this, and I completely agree with Toto Wolff. Now, if you don't, guys, I want you to let me know down in the comments what you thought of today's video. What do you think of also Daniel Ricciardo's situation? So thank you so much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Peace.